Mr. Dr. Satish Agnihotri, Dr. Vivek Bandyopadhyay, Mr. Walter Hard, Dr. Anil Garg, and other distinguished friends and colleagues, participants. We come to the conclusion of another significant event, the World Renewable Energy Technology Congress. As Dr. Vivek Bandyopadhyay, who is one of the founding members of this ministry in India, has just mentioned, a large section of the population in developing countries continues to use what we call renewable energy and not this fossil fuel energy for a lot of their daily needs, requirements, essentially cooking requirements and some other requirements, heating, or even at times lighting. But many people have called that a renewable resource. I do not call it a renewable resource because in effect you're destroying greenery. The real renewable resources are water, wind, and solar, and of course geothermal. You can grow these crops, you can grow these forests, but the temptation and the danger always is of their being ravaged by greedy commercial gains. So I think over the years, renewable has really stepped on the gas, so to say, and that really at the heart of it is technology. As I said in my opening remarks the day before, we've all been using the wind, the sun, water power, even for transportation, river transportation. We unfortunately gave it up in some countries, substituted by fossil transportation. That was the primary mode of transportation. Rivers, even logs, tea in India used to come down from Assam right to the ports by river route, never by the land route. Over the years, because we got so excited by the fossil fuel technology, the internal combustion engine, and coal to produce energy, really concepts which were universal in their application, because it did not require you to have that resource present at that location. It was a fungible resource. You could carry it to any location and produce the same desired effects there, whether it is petroleum products or it is coal. So it was the versatility of this fuel which I think completely overshadowed our use of renewable energy and natural resources. But over the years, we have done enough damage to the environment. We need to put the clock back. It's not easy to put the clock back other than having appropriate technology that will today be commercially be able to supplement, if not completely replace, the fossil fuel technologies which have become highly matured and developed over the last century and a half. So what these technologies had attained over almost 150 years, or maybe 200 years, the task before technologists working in the renewable sector is to compress that development time to a few decades. In fact, the global temperature rise is alarming. And if we have to contain ourselves within 2 degrees centigrade global rise, maybe we have just a decade more to transform the way we use energy for economic development. It cannot be anybody's case that you give up economic development for the sake of preserving the environment. Of course, the environment is at a higher plane when you talk of future generations. But that is something that cannot happen. We cannot allow poverty to continue. We cannot have so much differentiation among various sections of the population in the use of energy and the commercial opportunities to earn better livelihoods, to have better homes. That makes it imperative that events like the present one, they happen more frequently and with greater frankness and objectivity and a sense of purpose and a very crashed timeline in terms of results. Whether we like it or not, for a few years more at least, subsidy is going to drive renewable energy, because the real cost of renewable energy is the actual cost of production plus other support services. We also, when we are talking of renewable energy, that is electricity through solar and wind, we are talking of a carrier system through which we do not have to pay tariff in many cases. This brings in an element of subsidy. But sooner than later, when we start edging out the other technologies or other fuels, they will refuse to subsidize the sector. We'll have to find alternate methods of either improving efficiencies or adding environmental costs to the other technologies so that there is a fair accounting and distribution of costs. Be that as it may, there are concepts which need to be urgently brought in by legislation. There is legislation on the subject, but it's a question at times of enforcement. And foremost to my mind, in the growing scenario of rapid urbanization, is urban waste management. Urban waste not only pollutes the immediate neighborhood, it pollutes water sources through leaching, it leads to epidemics or major diseases which have begun to hit metropolises in India and other parts of the world with far greater frequency. We just concluded an Olympic Games in Rio, which for a while one thought may not happen because of the Zika virus or maybe some other disease. We have a lot of vector-borne diseases which are coming through bad waste management. If on the one hand we are trying to clean the environment and talking of global warming, and on the other hand you see societies are getting afflicted by diseases because of bad waste management, I think it's extremely short-sighted and something which needs to attract strong penal provisions for those who've been entrusted with the task of managing these habitations. We often, in this country, we've heard a slogan as we grew up that cleanliness is next to godliness. But I think it's more a slogan. Unless it is adopted as a way of life, we can never lead healthy lives. And as they say again, health is wealth. If we lose our health, there is no time to earn the money that we're looking for. We're shortening our lives. So this is something which governments like the Government of India are talking of, what we call Swachh Bharat, that is a Clean India campaign. But governments can only provide a slogan. It's the people who have to act. Like laws can be enforced only by the people and enforcement agencies and not by statute books. Statute books are like books in a library, which are getting increasingly irrelevant. In fact, by the time our grandchildren grow up, I think libraries will cease to exist. So I think laws are meaningless till they are enforced. And when we talk of a clean environment, we need to talk of an environment whose cleanliness is enforced by law. Gone are the days when constitutions or statute books will talk only of freedom, liberty, and right to life. I think a right to a healthy life and a right to a clean life are going to be the hallmarks of the coming millennium. The other technologies that we talked about, wind, solar, they're going to be increasing the use in the generation of electricity. However, sessions over the 3 days have made it amply clear that these technologies cannot automatically ride on systems which were based for fossil fuel systems, which were base load stations, which could operate under any conditions as long as the fuel was there and the machine was working. These are systems which depend on nature, and man has not yet conquered nature, nor will ever conquer nature. So we have to respect nature. We have to understand that they are intermittent in nature. And we have to prepare our systems or modify them to suit these new sources of energy, particularly electricity. This implies that the subject that we've been talking about yesterday and today, smart grids, there was a debate on what is smart, what is not smart. But I think one thing is pretty clear to us. You say, what's in a name? A rose is a rose. A grid is that which will continue to live and survive in spite of its participants, which will be different sources of energy. And this grid can only survive if it changes its nature to be an interactive grid, a thinking grid, which is talking and in constant dialogue with its various constituents. One side, the people who are energizing the grid, and the other who are using it commercially. That means that the input has to be known, predicted, as I mentioned earlier in the day, weather forecasting has to become part of it. And on the consumption side, demand side management controls prioritization of who goes out, who must stay out. All these have to come into play. And these directions cannot be left to the will of individual consumers. They must come through a centralized command and communication system. It's only then that we will have what is called a reliable grid. And these are the hard realities of the situation. If we have to build these systems, we have to also bring compensatory power, grid balancing power into the system. And those costs have to be added to the cost of power. That is the hard reality of it. There's no point in putting these as hidden costs. No, they're not. They must be out into the open. We must have these sources. If we must have these sources, we must have the compensatory mechanism for it to survive. Otherwise, leave renewables to individual homes and establishments. But that is not how society is made today. maybe in the days to come, if energy efficiency succeeds to such an extent that you can run your entire gadgetry on what you are able to produce within your own home, then there is no need to rely on a grid. But that does not happen. Those of us who are fortunate enough to be weighing more than 100 kilos or 150 kilos do need assistance to walk. They cannot do major jobs on their own. So that's why heavy consumption always will have to be supported from outside. And either you make your consumption so lean that you do such effective demand side management that you can island yourself and manage your own resources. But I think we live in a society, we have some common functions, common workplaces, common facilities like roads, street lights, banks, schools, colleges, all these need support. So we need to transit to a system where the system needs are met and honored by the new laws of the system. These, my friends, I think are the lessons to be learned for tomorrow. They're the writing on the wall. If we have to move towards this new and renewable source of energy, the technology must bring down the costs to be affordable for the poorest. The systems must be such that they allow you to regulate the input and output. And at the end of the day, for any technology or any source of energy to be universally acceptable, it must be affordable. And affordable in the sense of equitably affordable, not only affordable to the rich nations or the richer parts of poorer nations, but to every citizen on this planet. And I think it's in that spirit that we have met and will continue to meet. I thank you all for your very sincere participation. Thank you very much.